Hi there, welcome to the Halftime Huddle. Today I'm joined with Karen Williams, the book mentor. I'm looking forward to this conversation. Karen has written 10 books we will talk about, and she helps and supports people to do the same. Not necessarily write 10 books, but to use books as a tool to help and build your business. She started off in HR and business coaching, and I'm really intrigued to hear how she came from there. The best things to do is to bring her on. So let's say hello, welcome, Karen.
Thank you, Mark. It's a delight to be here today.
Good. Like I said, I am intrigued to, is it still 10 books or?
It's still 10. I'm writing number 11 at the moment, but it's still 10 books.
Oh, do you have this is enough, I've done it all, or is it just every time there's a new topic or new idea that you just has to come out?
I said never again after the first book. Here we are.
Oh, okay.
This latest book has been in my brain for the last 5 years, and this year it's been just pushing me and pushing me. Okay, it's coming out now. I'm on chapter 4 of a very rough first draft. So hopefully it will come out next year.
Brilliant. Okay, well, I'm sure we'll have a conversation about that a little bit later on. But another thing that intrigues me, and it intrigues me about all of the people I talk about, is how they get to where they are. Your journey is also intriguing and interesting because you started off in HR, and I'd love to hear what your journey was and what your origin story and what was your superhero origin moment of when you moved from, oh, have I gone a bit weird and skew if I have a little bit? Don't worry about that. I'll sort it out later. Technology. I'd love to hear what specific moment or the journey took you from HR into what you do now. So what is your origin story? I'd love to hear it.
Well, I started out in business in 2006 when I trained as a coach. And the reason I trained as a coach is because my boss said something to me one day that just really stopped me in my tracks. She said, Karen, I wish you'd speak out more. And I thought, okay, maybe I do need to work on myself. Maybe I need to do something differently. So I got myself a coach. But working with this coach, I found something that I really wanted to do myself. So beginning, I think it was around about April 2006, I trained as a coach. November, I kind of whispered, I'm setting up my own coaching business. It took me a few years to get going and actually give up the day job completely. But that was really my journey into coaching initially. I never set out to become a book mentor, but I started writing my first book in 2009 when I was doing my neurolinguistic programming qualification. I had the opportunity to spend time with some really successful coaches, and they helped me to really drive my business, change my business. And I realized what I was learning, I had to share with more people. So, like many people do when they have a bright idea, they go, why don't I write a book about it? So that was my journey into book writing. It wasn't easy. I had to learn the hard way. I didn't have someone like myself supporting me through the process. So I had to learn how to write it, how to get out of my own way in terms of my inner critic. I had to learn how to publish it. I had to learn how to market it and become a bestseller. But 18 months later, after I started it, it became a bestseller. I launched the book, and it really did change my business. It changed the way people saw me. It changed my own confidence and my clarity in my message as well. And it did change everything for me. I said never again after that first book, but 2012, I was writing book number 2, book number 3. And as you said earlier, Mark, I'm on my 11th book now. And it was around about 2013 when people started asking me for help with their books. And I went, well, it's easy, isn't it? Forgetting all the pain that I'd gone through a few years prior. So I started helping people informally with their books before I realized that my superpower is helping people to get through the mess in their head to really find what they're good at. So I can take somebody's rough idea, that rough desire to write a book, and turn it into something that is meaningful, that has structure, that has real focus. And I work primarily now with business owners who are writing books to build their business. So they might be memoir style books, they might be self-help books, how-to books, but ultimately, the people I've been working with for the last 11 years are people who've got a real big message to share. They want to be bold, they want to be braver, maybe they want to be a bit more disruptive. And actually, the book is a vehicle to actually help them to become more visible, credible, and to increase their authority. So that's really my origin story, where I started from, that accidental almost writing my first book through to now writing my 11th. And along the way, I've supported hundreds of business owners to get their books out there to become bestsellers and to really change their businesses and transform their businesses by writing their books that totally aligned and totally, increasing their visibility. I'm a natural introvert, so I have done my own TEDx. I did TEDx in 2017, so I'm an introvert, but I still believe that if you've got something important to say, it's worth saying it.
Sounds brilliant. And imagine, as you say, the idea of writing, I suppose, is a great sort of hook between the idea of coming out and speaking. I would imagine the step to speak is quite a step. Even though you've written loads of stuff, the idea to come out and speak about it is quite a leap. But the idea from having an idea to sharing it in written format may well be not quite a bigger leap, or is that not the case?
Well, I think a lot of people speak already on the topic that they're writing about. So I think the biggest thing when it comes to writing a book is it really needs to be where you want to take your business. So if your business is over in this area and you want to write a book over in this area, it doesn't really work. But actually, when you can combine the two and actually the book fuels the business, you probably already got material that you're talking about anyway. You might be doing podcasts, you might be speaking about the topic, you might be doing webinars, you might be doing podcast interviews, you might have written loads of blogs, you might have done, created all sorts of content, and actually that could become a book, and vice versa. When you've got a book, and that could be turned into content. But it's really when everything is totally aligned where it's where the magic happens, because people get to know you for what you do. So I don't think it necessarily matters whether you speak first or speak after. I think you do need to speak because you're showing up in a book and you need to get that message out there to as many people as possible. And there's not much point in writing a book and not putting the marketing behind it. It is a marketing tool at the end of the day, just like any other tool is, like this type of thing.
That's intriguing. I've seen some of your books, and one of them particularly was Your Book is Your Hook, where you talk about how it is a great tool for bringing people into your world by sharing. Absolutely. One of the challenges, especially if you're using it as a marketing tool, is knowing how much to put in a book and what, more importantly, potentially to leave out.
It's about having a process. I have a process I teach people, but in terms of the book itself, it needs to follow a natural journey for your reader. So don't put everything, if you put everything you know in the book, it's going to be disjointed, it's going to be muddled. But actually, what is the journey you're taking your reader on? Who is your book for initially? And then what is your journey from A to B? And absolutely, you don't have to put everything in the book. And I would recommend you don't put everything you know in a book. It's finding out, who is your book for? What do they want to get from it? And then give them that information, because you might have more than one book. You may not have 10, but you might have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, who knows? But actually, when you can really clarify that big idea for the first book or for the next book before you go too far down the line, and then it makes it easier to take a bit of information you've got and go, okay, does it go in this book or does it go in another book? Rather than try and put everything in one book, which can be overwhelming for you, let alone your reader.
No, yeah, okay, well imagine that. I like the idea of potentially splitting it into multiple books, maybe, because of the effort of probably learning how to write one book is probably scalable in some respects, especially I would imagine, as you're a prime example of how scalable writing one book through to multiple books is. But most people, I would imagine, wouldn't dream of starting, the idea of just one book is a huge leap.
It is, and I never had an idea. As I said, I never had an idea there'd be more than one when I started out. But I think, obviously, it's my 20th year in business this year, so I've evolved from that very green coach back in November 2006, not having a clue, wanting to change the world, but not having a clue how to do it, wanting to create that ripple effect, but having no idea how I could even create one tiny ripple, let alone big ripples. And actually, we evolve, don't we? And we grow and we evolve. Your Book is a Hook. I wrote that initially in 2014. And again, I've evolved since then. So I think we've always got something new to say. Our own operating system gets upgraded and we go, actually, I've got something new to say. And that's really where my current book is I've got something new to say. Things have evolved in sort of the 5 years that I kind of put a program together, and actually I'm moving forward and I'm evolving. So the book has to evolve with it.
Respected, and this is just an example. Your books, are they self-published or are they, I mean, what would you suggest? Self-published as a way to get your stuff out, or look for what they call now the traditional publishing process?
Well, that's a big question. I'll try and give a short answer. So I've gone down the partnership route and the self-publishing route myself. My clients go all sorts of routes. So you've kind of got 3 routes to publishing: self-publishing, partnership or hybrid publishing, and traditional publishing. So they're the main 3 routes. And I've got clients that have done all 3. So some self-publish, but if you are self-publishing, I recommend you go with a publishing partner who can do everything for you. I don't recommend people publish without getting that support, because there's a lot of hoops you need to jump through to actually get your book out there to the right people. You've got hybrid publishing or partnership publishing, is where you work with someone else who does a lot of that for you, but there's normally a higher cost involved and they get more heavily involved, and your book can be translated and you can sell the rights and that type of thing. And then you've got traditional publishing, which is where you have to pitch it to a publishing house and they say yes or no, and that can take time. So there are pros and cons to each of them. So I think pros and cons come down to time, it comes down to money, it comes down to who retains the copyright, how much control you have over it. So there's a lot of things to think about. I've done a whole podcast episode on this myself. There's 5 core things. There are things that you need to think about in terms of how do you want to get it out there? How quick do you want to do it? If you're going to go down the traditional route, and I said I'm hoping my next book will be out next year, and actually I am planning on going down the traditional route with this book, and it's unlikely it will be out next year. It's probably more likely to be 2027, just because of the time it takes to actually do the whole process.
And sort of the reason that I launched this is when you talked about how things evolve, it was intriguing to understand whether the idea is to create, like you said, a new book around the evolution that you've taken into, or whether it's, and again, I would imagine it depends, or whether to revisit the original statement that you made in your original book and modify that as you've seen second editions, third editions, etc. And I would imagine
one I prepared earlier. This is a second edition, so there are pros. There are pros and cons to second editions as well. So I did a second edition of Book Marketing Made Simple. I originally wrote this in 2017, updated it 2 years ago, so it came out end of 2023. It was pretty much a rewrite. The problem with doing a second edition is that you are rewriting something you've written before, so that can be quite hard, because do you keep it exactly the same, or how much do you add, how much do you take away? And I went away to write it because that's how I like to write at my best. So I took myself away to a little cottage in Dorset and I sat down to write, and then I realised it was more than just a refresh. The danger of also when you do a second edition is you lose all the reviews from the first. So that edition has only got, I think, about 20 or so reviews, whereas the first one I think had about 50, because it is technically a new book. So there are pros and cons. For me, I knew I needed to update it. I knew that marketing had changed in that period of time, but actually it's changed again in 2 years. So is there a third edition that comes out? I think with anything, it's about making something as future-proof as you can. So if you're writing a book, try not to be too specific. So if you're writing about AI, for example, things change in seconds, don't they? So things are moving forward so quickly. So you want to future-proof a book, but sometimes you do need a second edition, and sometimes you might have something new to say, which is where I am right now.
Yeah, and as you were saying that, it sort of stuck in my head a little bit that potentially it might be just that main decision is, are you just refining what you used to say and bringing in newer stuff, or do you have something new to say? In which case, that might be one of the decisions you have to take, which sounds like it's something that you've taken into account there. I'm intrigued about AI. I know you mentioned, and one of the first interactions I had with you was to go to one of your webinars on using AI to help create your book. What is your relationship with AI and book writing at the moment?
I think it's always a love-hate relationship with AI, isn't it? Because sometimes it's brilliant and sometimes it's not. I think AI is one of the tools that we should embrace in our businesses now. Absolutely not, because as humans, we've got the intellect, we've got the knowledge, we've got the experience, we've got the stories, and AI can't replicate it. But what I found, as you know, Mark, over the last sort of almost 3 years, I first came across ChatGPT in almost 3 years ago. I think it came out 3 years ago. And I thought I had a choice. Do I embrace it or do I ignore it? And I chose to embrace it and learn about it and learn how to use it effectively. And obviously it's evolved a lot in that period of time. But it's great to help people to get out of their own way in terms of, if you sit down to write and you're struggling, you could get ChatGPT to give you a prompt in that area. You could say, well, I'm writing a chapter about X. What do I need to include in this chapter? And it can give you some ideas. And I think the more you learn, it learns about you, the more you can train it in terms of it knows you and then it knows what you do, how you do it. So it can almost anticipate what you need to put in a book. So I find it's really great for structure. If you're struggling with something or you can't find the right word for something or you want another way of saying something, yeah, absolutely, you can use it. But I think it's got a wider reach these days in terms of transcribing audio. Some of my clients use it to transcribe audio. So you could speak into your phone and get it transcribed, or podcasts. I use Cast Magic for podcast show notes, which I find is really useful. And AI then helps me to craft the emails and the social media posts and everything else that goes out. So I think it's more than just using ChatGPT. There are other tools out there these days that probably are fueled by, they're driven by ChatGPT. But then you've got tools like Perplexity, which are great for research. But again, when it comes to research, you have to check things. So that's why there's a bit of a love-hate relationship, because sometimes I find it really frustrating, but sometimes I find it really useful as a sparring partner, a coaching partner, or a thing that I can just, just to sort of go backwards and forwards just to clarify my own thoughts.
No, and I think that sounds like a definite evolution of how people are using and particularly using it. It made me laugh because one of the things my wife does to create her social media posts is she will talk the post through ChatGPT. ChatGPT will arrange it a little bit and then she'll edit it afterwards. So there are lots of different ways of using it now. And you mentioned that it is evolving. So all those people who are writing books about AI are definitely either going to have to revisit or write a new book.
Well, yeah, I suppose you can talk about the principles without talking about the AI itself, but I do think it's evolving so quickly that we don't even know what's happening across the world, where they're spending time. We don't know what they've got in mind, which is quite scary as well.
No, indeed. But I think you're right. And it is one of those things where the genie is out of the box. Even if what they say, the bubble is about to burst, it'll still be there when it's gone away afterwards. It just will be in a different format, like the internet bubble when that burst is still here. But it's intriguing to see how things are going on. And I think there are great ways for it to help and support you. And I think, writing and ideas. And I love the idea, of it as a sparring partner, which sounds quite intriguing. So how do you use that?
When I updated Book Marketing Made Simple, I did literally I had a couple of chapters where I wanted to introduce new topics that weren't in the original edition. So I would just go into ChatGPT, well, I need to write a chapter on this, what needs to go in it? Obviously giving it the information that who it was for and the purpose of the chapter and things like that. And it just gave me ideas of what needed to go in it when it was a new topic that I knew a little bit about. And I think it's really great for research. But sometimes, as a sparring partner, I guess it's also about having that two-way conversation. Should I do this or should I do that? Let's talk about the pros and cons. So I guess that's more of a sparring partnership. It's more like a coaching tool in terms of exploring options, exploring ideas. But what I do find with ChatGPT particularly is that you get a lot of data out, and it says, I'm giving you all of this. Do you want to do A, B, C, D, or E, or F? And you're going, but I still need to do that before I make a decision on the A, B, C, D. So I think sometimes it's just that overwhelm that we're trying to avoid, and it can actually provide more overwhelm just because it opens possibilities. So again, good and bad of that.
No, I can testify for the idea that all of a sudden you can get overwhelmed with the answers of ChatGPT when it expands on all kinds of stuff that you now go down another rabbit hole. But I love that. And I love the idea that when you were talking about, which I want to revisit, is you were talking about your superpower of helping people to understand and clarify. You talked about the messy sort of middle, the messy stuff that's floating around their hair, and codify that in some respect. I love the idea that you can do that, because it is very much the case where there's a lot of people have a huge amount of experience messed in that thing floating around between their skull, a huge amount of experience, and trying to bring that out into a way that doesn't overwhelm others is a great skill to have. So how did you find that was your skill? What was the aha moment?
Gosh, I can note aha moments in other people. I'm not sure about the aha moment in me. I guess it was when I started working with people and started experimenting. I remember I was attending an event called Speak Like a TED Talker back in beginning of 2014, where I said, I'd like to help people with their books. And there was a lady there that said, I'd like to write a book. And she was my first official client who I took through my whole process. And the process was trial and error because I was testing out what worked and what didn't work. So I don't know if I had an aha moment. I just kind of realized that just through, it's almost like I'm holding up a mirror for my clients, and I'm using my skills as a coach, a clean language coach, NLP, to really sort of reflect back what they're saying and to help them to achieve that clarity of message, not necessarily by me going, oh, you could do this, this, and this, but actually just giving them that time and the space to talk about it. And I think for many of us, we get caught up in our head, or we might talk to our friends and family, but actually it is about getting that clarity and being able to talk without being interrupted, where you actually have a chance to explore everything, rather than the fact that you might start saying something to a friend and they go, oh yeah, you should do this. Or actually you need time to talk it through. You need time to have it reflected back. You need that space, that pause, which is, I think, because I bring the coach experience to the conversation as a book mentor, I know when to pause. I do get excited sometimes. And I also know when to mentor and actually give people advice or suggest something that they might want to do.
Okay, now we're having a little bit of a break here because I made a simple mistake. I didn't put my do not disturb on. And someone's just trying to call me. Technology, I'm glad we're not doing this live. Yeah, so we were talking about your superpower and how it came in. I think that's another sometimes realization. And it sounds that it was a bit of a transition into that aha moment. So generally, it sounds like your experience with your first customer sort of drew it out of you. That might have been because, like I say, not everybody has that eureka moment when they were running around like Archimedes after the bathtub. Sometimes it's a slow realization, and it sounds like it might have been a slow realization. So it's brilliant. So on the flip side, we're talking about superpowers. I love also to explore a little bit of the other side because we all like our superheroes or our things to have a little bit of humanity. Is there anything particularly about the book writing process that you find would be your kryptonite? If you could not do it, what would it be? Or the book writing mentoring process? What is your hardest part?
Yeah, I love the book writing mentoring process. I think it's all the stuff behind it that can cause issues because there's always something to do. I've got a really great business manager, but there's always something to do, isn't there? There's always something to do in terms of, a funnel that needs updating or a bit of tech that's not working or something that you change one thing and it breaks something else. So for me, it's having systems in place is really important. So actually having systems. Now I'm not very good at writing them down. They're often in my head, which doesn't help Tracy, who works with me. But I think that's quite important. So it's that type of thing it's all of the stuff that surrounds running a business, which I think all of us go, oh, if I could do the book writing and mentoring every day, it would be great. But it's everything else that surrounds it that can be challenging from time to time.
No, indeed, indeed. And that brings us back to exactly what the whole process of this podcast started about, is discussing the challenge you face when you're running a business as opposed to doing the thing you want to do most. A lot of people, as you say, book writing process or the book mentoring process, I could do that 9 to 5, 10, 11 hours a day because I love it because it's not work. The rest of the stuff is the hard work. And that's where this fits. How do you focus on that? You talked about you've got a business manager. Is there anything else that you do to help keep you focused through the challenges that you face by actually running the business?
Well, I guess one of the biggest challenges, because I am a woman of a certain age, I do get brain fog from time to time. So I think one of the things I've recognised over the years is I have to manage my diary quite well. So my mornings are my sharpest time for doing any client work, but that only gives me sort of 3 or 4 hours a day, really, because I like to go to the gym in the mornings as well. So I do that 4 times a week. So it's all about managing your time. If I know that I need to keep, like tonight, I'm working till 8 o'clock, so I'm running a session this evening, and I know that I'll break it up at some stage with a walk. For me, that helps me to fuel. It helps me to change my state. It helps me to refresh. So I think, what we eat, when we eat, going out for exercise, I think it's about having the right processes in place to be able to be as effective as possible, because I couldn't mentor 8 hours a day every day because my brain just gets full. So I think it's important to recognize not putting too much in your diary and being realistic about what you do, what you don't do. And I've learned that the hard way over the years, where I've been overwhelmed or, I don't want to use the word burnt out because there's various versions of burnt out, but I do find that there are times when I know, oh, I need to pull back, or I need a holiday, or I need a break, or I need some time out. And I recognize that now where I didn't used to recognize it. So I just think it's just something to be mindful of. It's being able to delegate stuff. So with my podcast, I record it and then I hand it over to someone else. Yes, I do the show notes. Yes, I do all the social media stuff, but the editing, I know you, Mark, you do the editing yourself. Whereas for myself, I'll pay for someone else to do that. And I think it's knowing what you do well and then what other people can do well.
No, and really, I only do editing because there's now a tool that I find is really easier to do it. For a long time, and this is exactly where you are, that the act of editing was really that huge amount of friction that stopped me doing this in the first instance, because having to go through something like GarageBand to find out where the ums were, the ahs were, the sound that didn't quite work, or the conversation that crashed, or the bit of stuttering or bit of communication. That is just, for me, was way a bridge too far. But now with some of the, like, we're back on the AI route, the AI tools like Descript, it's so much easier to do. That's the only reason I do the editing, because it's so much easier. I would pass it on quite happily, because I think it is one of those things with. And secret tip, one of the reasons why I do this live is because I don't like editing.
Yes,
Apart from when I get a phone call halfway through a recording and I think, oh damn, I'm gonna now have to cut that and move it around a little bit. But generally I do this as if it's live. When it's gone, it's out of my head and it's gone. It's good to know your strengths and your weaknesses, your kryptonite and your superpowers, etc., as we mentioned, and supporting that and helping that and building up processes and support mechanisms. I'm very supportive of outsourcing as much as you can. I know it's a challenge when people first start, because outsourcing can, they may be cash poor, but time sort of rich-ish. So, outsourcing comes when you're able to pay for that. I would imagine, like you say, the other thing is there are things you like and things you don't like.
Yeah. And there are books I like, and clients I love working with. I wouldn't say there's clients I don't like working with, but there's types of books that I enjoy working with. So I think as you spend more time knowing yourself, you know where to put the type of thing that I want to say yes to, and the type of thing I go, actually, that's not for me. And I've become more discerning, I guess, over the years as well, in terms of who I like to work with, who I like to support, and what I don't want to do as well. Which not everyone has a choice.
Yes, especially at the beginning. And I've come across a lot of people who are trying very hard when they start a business to niche, as they say, to find that particular niche, those sort of people they want to work with, the sort of things they want to do, etc. Until, like you say, until you've done a couple of these things and you start to recognize where you shine and the people and the books or the tools or the services you provide that you do in such a way that they're brilliant because you enjoy them. Until you've done a couple of those things, that it's really difficult to niche. And so, yes. That's a message I find, it's important. It's really good for a message to have a single message, to be able to say to a single person and talk about it. But until you know what that is, experimentation, I think, is the real school. And so going back to when you talk about what sort of books do you find that you gravitate towards?
I gravitate towards the author more, who wants to make a bigger difference in the world, who wants to create an impact. They've got something bold, something exciting, something new. So I gravitate with that more than the book itself. But actually, the books I tend to work with, I would call business building books. So they're not necessarily about business, but the whole goal is to build that author's business, to reach more people, to create a bigger difference, to maybe get more speaking engagements, to maybe grow their business, or to get funding, or whatever it might be. And I think that's the type of person I work with more and more, is that it's a person who's got that bigger vision beyond the book. And I do talk about beyond the book, and I think that's an important part of the process. It's not just about the book, it's what the opportunities the book creates.
Okay. Yeah, no, and I did see that in the book we talked about earlier, The Book Is Your Hook. You talk very much about post the book, when the book's finished. When you've finished the book, is out there, you've done the launch, what do you do with it? And that's very much I would imagine, is that part of your process to try and identify that before you even start writing the book, what you want to do with it afterwards?
Absolutely, yeah. And I think I talk about it more now than I did 11 years ago. I talk about it much more now. Is part of the process of writing a book is to talk about it before you've even started writing it. Then you're writing the right book. Otherwise, you could easily spend a whole year writing the wrong book that doesn't land with people. So I think more now, and that's part of the new book, it is about using this as an opportunity to build your business as you're writing the book. So you can start saying, hey, I'm writing a book. What do you want to hear about? Do interviews with people, do surveys, find out what people want to read and what they're interested in before you pour your heart and soul into something that's not going to land. It's deciding what is, as we talked earlier, Mark, it's about what goes in the book and what doesn't go in the book. And you don't know that unless you ask people what they want to hear about. And if you've got more than one idea, it's deciding, even if you niche down, which I recommend all my clients do, even if you niche down to a particular audience, they might want to know 5 different things, but you don't want to put 5 different things in the book unless they're all interrelated. It's deciding which area you're going to put your key focus on.
Indeed. I would imagine also that drums up a little bit of excitement about the book when it comes out. If you've been part of the evolution and the growth process of it, you'll be keen to look at it when it turns out. Is that also part and parcel of what you do and why you do it that way?
Yeah, and also you might get clients off the back of the book before you've even written it, just because of the clarity that is created. Some of my clients create a course alongside writing the book, and they might sell the course first. I've had clients who have got clients off the back of the book just by doing interviews and having conversations with people, going, oh, okay, so I haven't spoken to you for a while. This is what you have to say now. I'm interested. Can I hire you? So I've had people do that as well. So I think it's looking bigger than the book, because let's be honest, a book itself doesn't make a lot of money, but actually it has the potential to grow a business through, when you're really smart about the process and you look beyond the book, you can look at what it can give you in terms of your business, and also how you can serve other people. That's more than just the book, because that's really where the strength lies in terms of a book, when it's integrated, as I mentioned earlier, into everything that you do. So the earlier you do it, the better. And then it doesn't matter if the book takes a year, 2 years, 3 years to come out, or 3 months. It's just about integrating everything together.
That's an interesting twist, because I think sometimes one of the things I could imagine puts people off doing something like this is the enormity of the potential task ahead of them. But if they're breaking it down and they're also reaping benefits of the process as opposed to the outcome, then I would imagine that lightens the feeling of overwhelm of having to write a book.
Yeah, and it's always about breaking it down into bite-sized chunks. It's starting with whenever I work one-to-one with people, and sometimes through my group programs, I do a strategy call with them. So we kind of look at what is the strategy behind the book, what is the book before they start doing it. Then we work on the structure, and then they work on individual chunks. So they're not writing a 50,000 word book, they're writing a chapter or part of a chapter. It is literally step by step. If I think about a couple of the clients I'm working with one-to-one at the moment, we are doing one chapter at a time. The vision and the overall scope of the book has been mapped out, but we are working one by one through the book to actually get to that end point. Then it doesn't feel quite so overwhelming. If you know that you need to get part one finished by whatever date, it's better than saying, well, I need the whole book finished by 2 months later, because that can feel quite overwhelming when you put yourself under that pressure.
Indeed, and I would imagine most of these people you're dealing with are also running a business as well. So it's trying to fit it into that schedule. And how do you encourage them to find the time to do that? And what's your, for you as well, what is your tip for finding that time to do this kind of activity?
Well, I'm actually running 6 week writing sprints at the moment. So we're, at the time of recording this, we're week 5 of the 6 week writing sprint. So that is about regular writing hours. So, there's a couple of things you can do, and it depends on the type of person you are. As I mentioned earlier, I like to go away and write. I don't always have that privilege. I haven't had the privilege for this book yet, although I'd like to put something in for next year. I run a writing retreat in Spain for people who want to move themselves away from distractions to get a good chunk of writing and thinking, scoping out, planning, whatever they want to do. That's a really great tool for some people. But for most people, when you've got a family, you've got to put the dinner on the table, walk the dog, pick the kids up from school, or whatever you've got in your life, you want it into you want to put it into bite-sized chunks. So an hour a day is a good way forward, half a day a week. You don't need really more than 4 hours a week to get a good quality book written in 6 months, but you do need to be consistent. And that hour a day, if you're doing an hour a day, needs to be productive. If you turn up for that hour, if I turn up 9 o'clock tomorrow morning and I go, what am I going to do today? Oh, I don't know. Shall I put the kettle on? I'm going to have a biscuit. Oh, I'm going to, go outside for a walk. You've lost the hour. But if I turn up tomorrow morning, 9 o'clock, going, I'm working on chapter 4 and I'm working on this chunk, I can get so much more done because I'm planned for it. So I think that's where a lot of authors go wrong, is they kind of think they're writing, but they're not really writing, they're faffing. Let's be honest. And we all do it, don't we? But actually, if we're smart about the process, it becomes so much easier. So I think it is about those regular times in the diary, or knowing that you can go away for a chunk of time and then making sure it happens, or both.
Mm. And that sounds intriguing, because I know from experience it's easy to put something in your diary for a particular activity, writing or whatever the activity is, and then spend a lot of time prepping for that activity during the time you should be doing the activity, and all of a sudden end up with a 10-minute rush to at least get some of that thing done.
Yeah. And sometimes it happens, and 10 minutes is better than nothing, isn't it?
Yes. Especially if you've got the accountability of potentially having to come and talk to someone like you and say what you've done and what you haven't done, that 10 minutes can feel superpowered. But yeah, the other challenge I come across, and I've seen, especially in the writing, is talking about that empty piece of paper, that writer's block type thing. You come across people for whom just getting over that, opening that file and starting, what's your tip and trick for getting over that initial moment of emptiness and dread of trying to do something?
If they've worked with me, no, probably not, because they will know what they're writing next and they'll have a process for it. So if they've got kind of, so if, I think most people get that blank page syndrome is when they open and they don't know what they're doing, they don't know where they're going, they don't know what they're working on next. So they have that blank bit of paper. But actually, when you've got the strategy behind it and you know what the chapters are, I recommend my clients do this. They map out the whole book before they start writing. So you should know what's next. I've got 15 chapters. Actually, I think I may have evolved to 18 chapters. I haven't looked at the plan for a while, but I know what's next. So I don't necessarily know the whole plan. I've got an overview of the plan for my book, but I know the first part is 5 chapters, and I'm on chapter 4 out of those 5 chapters at the moment. So I know exactly what I need to do next. But if I do sit down tomorrow morning and I don't know where I'm going, I might put into ChatGPT, I'm writing a section on this, just give me a few pointers. Where do I start? That's a good way of doing it. And I find with my clients is if they're working on a new chapter, we have a conversation about it. So I might sit down with a client and say, right, so the next thing you're working on is chapter 3. Should we have a quick chat about it? So they talk it through. They've got the recording. They've got the transcript of the recording if they want to as well. So they've got the AI version of the recording. So it actually just keeps them moving with it. So that's a good way of doing it. Talking it through with someone. The other thing that they can do if you don't like tech is to go for a walk. If I'm trying to write something or think about something, I'll go for a walk. Yesterday, I knew that this was coming up. So rather than sit at my computer, I went for a 45-minute walk just to think about what I wanted to say today, knowing that I didn't quite know what was going to come out my mouth, but I call them thinking walks or clarity walks. I just have to go out my own. And if my husband wants to join me, I have to say, I need to think today. And I just go to clear my head. I find that can be quite useful if I'm writing or planning for something, because I don't get distracted by other things. I just walk with that intention.
Intriguing. And it sounds to me like part and parcel of the challenge with the empty page is hitting that empty page before you're really ready for that empty page. And the writing process or the creation process is a process that happens before the actual instance of creation. Even with you talked about going for a walk or the planning or the talking with other people, before you open that empty book, if you've got an empty book, or that empty file on a word processor or whatever else your tool of choice is. So like the idea of actually not coming to it sort of empty, really.
Mm-hmm. And if you do come to it empty, the worst that can happen is you journal about it. Just go, okay, so you might get a notebook or something and go, right, handwriting can be quite useful in that respect. Take yourself somewhere else. I'm at my desk working and I tend to write at my desk as well. We anchor work to your desk in terms of, for some people, they find it hard to switch into a different mode of working. So some people have a different writing space. I don't personally, because I like being where I am. If you are struggling, take a notebook to a cafe. Take a notebook into the garden if the weather's nice, or sit on the settee or whatever. And I think we can move that space, and that can help as well. And the physical art of taking a pen and a bit of paper just unlocks something different in the brain. So if you know that you're writing on a particular chapter or a particular topic and you're not quite sure where to take it, journal on it. The worst that happens is you've got 500 words of rubbish, and the best that happens is you've got a little bit of gold.
Absolutely. And I would imagine, like you say, sometimes I know from experience myself, from doing journaling and a bit of writing beforehand, just sometimes the act of just starting gets the blood flowing. And even just doing, I think it's the morning pages, the process they talk about is sometimes if you get stuck, just write, I don't know what to write. I don't know what to write. I don't know what to write. I don't know. Yeah. Until it comes out. So yeah, I love that idea. The other thing, you've worked with hundreds of people and helping with their book and running the writing retreats. How do you keep in contact with these people? Do you have a community of people behind you that you help and support? What do you do to keep in touch with these people? Because I know community and engaging in other people is important for businesses.
Yeah, so I've got systems in place. So I've got a newsletter which goes out every week to everyone on my mailing list who has subscribed. I've also got a CRM, a customer relationship management system, which means that I can set reminders to do things. If someone's had a conversation and they haven't come back to me, it reminds me to follow up with them. I do run a monthly networking meeting on a Tuesday, lunchtime, first Tuesday of the month, where people have a chance to network for an hour with myself, with other people who are writing. So we consistently get 10 to 20 people on that each month. Normally a topic or a sort of something to learn, have a discussion, and there's normally a breakout room So it's kind of quite fluid. There's a plan to it. Every month there's something slightly different. December, for example, we're just reflecting on 2025 and getting ready for January, of course, because that's a good time to do it. That's the main thing. And then I've got different programs that I run for different people. Some are group programs. What I love about the group programs is it normalizes the process. If someone's struggling with something and they speak up about it, there's probably someone else struggling with the same thing, but they're not talking about it. So that mixture of, community and also connection and coaching, I guess the whole thing just provides the mechanism for people to be supported. So it really depends. Some people do come to me because they just want to work one-to-one with me and have that undivided attention. And some people like the normality of working with a group and getting to know other people, which obviously is where we go with the retreats and also where we go with the sprints and the kind of the cafe meeting that we do once a month as well.
Oh, no, sounds good. So it sounds there's a lot of ways that you connect with the people you're supporting, and also you allow them to help and connect with each other as well. So it sounds like that's built into the way you work, which is quite refreshing and it's quite good. I find that people sometimes miss that sense of connection that you build up with your customers and people you interact with, and that is something that we all really could merit from a lot more. So it sounds like it's a great way of doing that, and I love the idea. And I have seen your networking. I haven't quite made it across to one of them, but I will see if I can find some time. It's quite intriguing for me. We mentioned before, we talked about the fact that there are 3 standard parts to this, that we have a wide ranging conversation, but the 3 standard parts is to talk about your origin story, to talk about how you navigate through running a business, and also this final bit. And this final bit really seems to be, for me, it was there because I love the idea of books and I love to hear what about other people are referring and stuff like that. But it's intriguing for me to ask someone who helps people write books to answer this question. And this is the question about books that you, rather than books you love to read, because I know people who are engulfed in books are often, thousands of books, hundreds of books, and it's often the latest book they're reading, or the book you've recently read that it's really fresh in their mind and exciting is the one that they love and they comes across. But the intriguing question is, in terms of books, and other than your great books, what books would you or have you recommended to other people or gifted to people most regularly?
Well, that's an interesting question. I quite like Made to Stick by Chip and Dan Heath, which is all about making things stick. So it's finding that hook, which I talk about quite a lot. Story Brand, Donald Miller, that's a good book. Susan Payton's also got a good book. She's been on my podcast around storytelling as well. Lisa Cron has written a couple of books around storytelling. So if you want to tell a story but you're not quite sure how to do it, there's some good books there. They would be my kind of top ones that come to my head without thinking too deeply.
Brilliant. And I love them all. Like I said, a part of this section of the podcast is for me to add to my TBR list. It's also because I love to hear people's recommendations. And it's also nice and confirming when I hear multiple recommendations. I've heard the Donald Miller book and the Made to Stick book a couple of times, which adds to the weight of those recommendations, which is brilliant. And obviously, everyone should also read Book Marketing Made Simple and your book is your hook. And the other 8+1 coming books that you've written on writing. Before we sort of close down, because like I said, I could have this conversation for ages, and we've talked about this beforehand about having conversations before and after that you think I should have done. So I'm sure we will have more conversations later on. But in terms of, for someone who wanted to find out a little bit more about you, other than going to Amazon and getting your books, where's the best place for them to find out more about you and connect with you and say hi?
I'm on LinkedIn, Karen Williams Libertas, and my website is libertas.com, which is LIBROTAS.com. And there's a story behind that as well. So that's where you can find me. So there's previews on the website. Get Started Workbook is a good place to start. Or listen to the Business Book Bites podcast. And that's another place you could go.
Yes. And I love that idea, because essentially, like I said, I'm always looking for a long list of books to read. There's always way too many. So recommendations is the best way for me to understand what is my next on my TBR list. So lovely to speak to you. I would recommend everybody check out where Karen hangs out in LinkedIn, connect and say hi. And also, I'm sure everybody out there is running a business or wanting to grow their business. They've got a lot of information to share. And if you have an urge to share it, then come and say hello to Karen. Thank you very much for your time, Karen. And we will speak again. Like I said, I'm So tempted to ask about Libertas, so maybe that will be for the next time.
Absolutely. Thank